We'll start off the list with Vanitas no Carte. This anime is set in steampunk Paris where vampires exist alongside humans and some vampires become curse bearers. They lose control, turn violent, and basically become a public disaster. A human doctor shows up claiming he can cure that curse using a mysterious book, which sounds like a scam until you actually see it work. He teams up with a vampire who's hunting the book for his own reasons, and the series becomes them traveling through vampire society solving curse incidents while uncovering what's really causing them. Each major arc is basically a new case.
But the deeper story is the mystery behind Vanitas himself.
Why he has the book, what happened in his past, and who's
manipulating curses to push humans and vampires into conflict.
It starts as a stylish supernatural detective setup, then slowly turns into a bigger conspiracy thriller with trauma-driven character reveals and faction wars. If you want a shonen that feels like the blueprint, then Dai no Daiboken is exactly that, done with real care. Some may call it basic, but that's missing the point. It's unapologetically a classic heroic fantasy, where Dai isn't trying to be morally ambiguous, he's trying to be good, and the show commits to that without irony. The setup is pure adventure. Dai starts as a kid, dreaming of being a hero, gets thrown into a world-threatening conflict early, and then the story becomes a long journey of training, allies, and escalating threats that reminds me of the good old classical shonen. What makes it bingeable is the progression. The party grows, former enemies become allies, the villains aren't just stepping stones, and every arc feeds the next until it builds into a genuinely huge final stretch. And it's not just Dai, multiple characters evolve in ways that make the long run worth it, especially the ones who start out cowardly or broken and end up unrecognizable by the finish. This is also why the 100 episode run is such a win. It brings back that classic feeling where the journey matters as much as the finale. The only caveat is the tone. It's optimistic, sincere, and proudly old school, so if you need modern subversion to stay interested, it won't chase that. But if you want a fantasy shonen that's honest, uplifting, and ridiculously satisfying in the way it pays off growth, sacrifice, redemption, and friendship, this is a must-watch. Humanity gets wiped out by a mysterious apocalypse, and vampires step in to save the remaining children by basically turning them into livestock. The story follows a boy who manages to escape and join the human resistance army. There he enrolls in a squad-based training unit where soldiers use cursed weapons and teamwork to fight vampires and reclaim the surface. So the story becomes two tracks: military shonen progression and revenge, where Yu is trying to kill the vampire nobility responsible for his family's death. The deeper plot is that the war isn't as simple as humans versus vampires. There are secret experiments, hidden factions, and betrayals start revealing that someone engineered this entire disaster and both sides are being played. It starts as revenge on vampires, then turns into a bigger conspiracy war where the squad has to survive long enough to even learn what the real enemy is. Magi is one of the most slept-on modern classics. This shonen fantasy starts colorful and adventurous, then gradually reveals it's actually about power, ideology, and what humanity even means. The core premise is simple. Mysterious dungeons appear around the world, and if you conquer one, you earn a Jin's power. Meaning whoever wins dungeons can literally rewrite a nation's future. That's why the early story feels like travel and discovery. Alibaba wants to rise out of nothing, Aladdin is a strange kid with world-shaping potential, and Morgiana is a former slave learning what freedom even means. Their adventures turn into dungeon raids, new kingdoms, and alliances that keep expanding the map. Every new country has its own system, its own cruelty, and its own version of justice. By the time you hit the big second half storyline, it stops feeling like separate arcs and becomes one long escalation. If you want a fantasy shonen where the action is hype and the world building actually says something, where conquering a dungeon isn't just loot, it's political power, then Magi is absolutely worth the ride, and it'll make you wish we got a season 3. If you want a pure adventure shonen that feels like it's building a party and climbing toward a final boss, this is one of those older shows that got left behind in the conversation. It's set in a world where Vandels are the main threat, and the whole story runs on a simple drive. Beet wants to become a top-tier Vandel buster after tragedy early on pushes him into the role, and he carries the weight of that loss for the rest of his journey. The series starts off pretty standard, but if you stick with it, the plot expands and the show becomes more addictive once the bigger conflicts and team coming together direction is clear. The main character can be goofy, but still locks in when things get serious. It also helps that the villains aren't treated like faceless evil props all the time. The story at least tries to give them personality and emotion when it counts. The main caveat is that it doesn't feel complete in anime form. There's filler near the end, and the story stops before everything is fully paid off, so you will have to pick up the manga. But if you're in the mood for a straightforward shonen quest with a big world, steady momentum, and that classic keep moving forward energy, then this is an easy choice. If you want something that isn't another Team Saves the World setup, then this is basically a full-on hunt. The world is the gourmet age, where rare ingredients are valuable enough to start wars, and the power system is tied to eating and evolving through insane food. The core duo is Toriko and Komatsu. One is the bruiser who captures monsters, and the other is the chef who makes the prize worth it. So every arc becomes a mix of exploration, survival, and how are they even going to bring that thing down? As ridiculous as the concept may sound, the action and adventure is actually fun. If you want a modern shonen that's brutal when it needs to be, but doesn't drown in edge, this is one of the easiest shows to underestimate. The story follows a strange, emotionless kid living on the outskirts of society who gets pulled into a world of kimono incidents, which are supernatural cases where humans and monsters collide. At first it plays like a case-based supernatural series, but it steadily turns into something heavier as the show reveals what the MC is, why he was treated the way he was, and how ugly this world can be behind the mystery setup. And because it doesn't drag its arcs out forever, it's one of those shows that's best watched in a binge. The only real caveat is that if you need your protagonist to be expressive right away, then his flatness early on can feel distant until you realize that's the point of the story. If you want a short, modern supernatural shonen with solid momentum and a core character journey that actually changes the lead, this should go on your list. There aren't that many shonen where the MC is the leader of some form of powerful organization like Hitman Reborn, and that alone makes this an easy pick. The story follows a reluctant heir to a powerful demon clan. By day, he has negative aura to the point he is basically hiding in plain sight, but that changes entirely by night where his demon leads the clan to deal with trouble. The early stretch can feel slow because the story spends time setting up the clan, the politics, and why he keeps hesitating. But once the conflicts fully lock in, the show gets more addictive, and a lead who gradually stops running from the role he was born into. It's also not just grim all the time, there's a steady layer of light comedy that breaks tension. When it wants to be hype, it delivers with sword-heavy action and night mode moments that feel like a real shift in presence instead of a random power-up button. If you're in the mood for a supernatural clan drama with a protagonist who actually has to grow into being the boss, this deserves a spot. Every 1,000 years, 100 demon children are sent to Earth to fight a battle royale. The last demon standing becomes the Demon King. But there's a catch. Each demon is paired with a human, and the human has a spell book that unlocks the demon's spells. So, if the book gets burned, that demon is instantly eliminated and sent back to the demon world. The main duo is Zatch and Kyo. Early on it plays comedic because Zatch is chaotic and childish, but as they run into other teams, you start learning why each demon is fighting and what winning actually costs. As the cast expands, it stops being random fights and starts becoming bigger arcs with rival groups, long-term enemies, and alliances. This is a relatively new shonen, but has a very similar art style to old school anime, where many would even mistake it to an anime from the early 2000s. Ushio is a stubborn teenager who discovers a powerful demon beast named Tora pinned to a wall by a legendary spear, and of course he pulls the spear out, frees Tora, and immediately inherits the job the spear was doing, protecting people from yokai that are now drawn to him. Ushio gets forced into fighting supernatural creatures, learns what the spear actually is, and slowly realizes these attacks aren't random. There's a bigger evil connected to Tora's past and the spear's origin. The real hook is the duo. Ushio wants to be a righteous hero, Tora is selfish chaos, and they spend most of the show arguing while still having to fight side by side until their bond becomes the emotional core of the series. By the time the bigger conflict fully clicks, it stops feeling episodic and starts feeling like a full mythic war story, where every earlier encounter mattered. If you want an old school shonen that's about getting stronger the hard way, no magic bloodlines, no chosen one cheats, then this is the one. It follows Kenichi, a bullied high school kid who stumbles into the Ryozenpaku dojo after meeting Mew, and suddenly his learned self-defense goal turns into surviving a ladder of increasingly dangerous street fighters. The masters aren't just power scaling props, they're loud, weird, and constantly bouncing off each other, so even the training segments stay entertaining. There's a big rotation of opponents, allies, and instructors with enough personality that the show rarely feels empty even when the plot is simple. It is a classic weak kid climbs the ranks story, and some people feel
The visuals can look a bit plain at times, but if your favorite part of shonen is watching a character earn every upgrade through reps, bruises, and experience,
this is a super solid pick. This follows a normal high schooler, Kazuki, that gets dragged into a hidden battle against homunculi, human-eating monsters living among people. And the only way to fight them is by using a catalyst that turns willpower into a personal weapon called a
Busou Renkin.
Kazuki trains under the Alchemist Warriors, learns how his weapon works, and gets thrown into missions where each new enemy reveals a bigger piece of the organization behind the homunculi. And honestly, the standout is Toriko. She's cold, mission first, and intimidating from the start. But over time, you see her soften in believable steps without losing her edge. It's a tight 26-episode shonen with clear progression, clean fights, and a complete feeling ride. It's a solid pick. This anime duo carried entire arcs on chemistry alone. This is one of those shows that people used to stumble into and then wonder why nobody talks about it anymore. Two guys in Tokyo run a business that sounds simple on paper. If something was stolen from you, an item, a secret, even a person, they will get it back. Early cases feel standalone, but the deeper you go, the more you realize the retrievals keep pulling them into the same criminal ecosystem: gangs, mercenaries, and weird experiments. The duo act like laid-back freelancers, but they're infamous for what they used to be, and long arcs are basically their past catching up with them in increasingly dangerous ways. The anime unfortunately doesn't fully finish the story, but if you want a shonen where every arc is a new job that turns into a bigger war, this is worth the watch.
Basically, what that means is that I'll always be 10 times faster than you.
If you miss shonen where fights are won by thinking, not by magically unlocking a bigger aura mid-episode, this one still holds up. The setup is wild in the best way. A god candidate drafts a middle schooler into a tournament, and the winner gets a blank talent that can become basically anything. Our guy Ueki gets what sounds like the worst power on paper, turning trash into trees, and then spends the whole series proving why creativity beats raw stats. Early on, the show can feel a little rough and kids TV coded, which is exactly why a lot of people never get to the good part. But once the tournament structure fully kicks in, it becomes a steady climb with new opponents, increasingly strange abilities and fights that are basically puzzles with consequences. What makes it work is how often the MC wins without feeling cheap. He's not overpowering everyone, he's adapting faster than they are. If you want an underrated tournament shonen where the power system stays fun because it rewards smart play, this is a strong pick.
Level 2! What do you say now? Still...
This is basically delinquent warfare plus comedy. Oga is a violent high school brawler who ends up stuck raising the Demon King's baby because the kid literally latches onto him as the chosen caretaker. From there, the show runs on a simple loop. Oga tries to live his life or dump the baby on someone else, and the baby's presence keeps pulling him into bigger fights, bigger weirdness, and escalating school gang chaos. Even with all the randomness, there is an underlying plot that keeps returning, and the cast expands enough that the conflicts get more layered as you go. The warning is that it's often episodic, so if the comedy isn't landing for you halfway in, it probably won't suddenly become a different show. And the anime doesn't give the most conclusive finish, so you would have to pick up the manga if you want more closure. But if you do like shonen comedy with fights sprinkled in constantly, this is an easy binge that still feels different from the usual formula. This looks like a children's yokai show, and that's exactly why people don't take it seriously. But the 2018 version is way smarter than it looks. It uses yokai stories to talk about modern life technology, isolation, social pressure, and the way people treat anything different. A human girl named Mana becomes the audience entry point into the yokai world. She meets Kitaro, and from there the series works like a supernatural case file. Sometimes by fighting, sometimes by negotiation, and sometimes by dealing with the fact that humans and yokai are stuck sharing the same world whether they like it or not. What makes this version stand out is that it's set fully in the present. Phones, social media, and modern habits aren't ignored. It can be funny, but it also gets darker than you'd expect from its rating, and some episodes genuinely feel like short horror stories with a message underneath. The only warning is that it's long and mostly episodic, so you will run into a few weaker episodes. But if you give it time, the cast grows on you in a way that makes it feel like you've joined their little world, and the bigger arcs hit harder because you've already lived in that setting for a while. If you want a shonen that feels gothic, heavy, and constantly one step away from tragedy, this is the one. The premise is straight to the point. Alan Walker joins the Black Order to hunt Akuma, weapons born from grief, while the Millennium Earl wages a quiet war using human despair as fuel. Early on, it can look like a Mission of the Week, Exorcist series, but it keeps widening the scope until it becomes a long-form conflict about identity, loyalty, and what these powers are really costing the people using them. The power system has style, and the best arcs feel like the show is balancing horror tension with shonen momentum. If you're looking for an underrated dark shonen, then this absolutely earns a spot.
Oh god.
If you are tired of shonen, where the main character wins just because he wanted it more, this is the antidote. A gate opens in Japan and neighbors start crossing over, so a defense agency called Border fights back using specialized weapons and a strict combat system. The story follows Osamu, a rookie agent who's genuinely underpowered, and Yuma, a transfer student with secrets and absurd combat talent. What makes it interesting is that battles aren't power-up roulette. They're about roles, positioning, timing, matchups, matchups, and team plans that actually make sense. Even when the cast gets huge, it doesn't feel like background noise. People matter because they contribute something specific to the fight and the operation. Man, since Osamu stays imperfect for a long time, progress feels earned instead of handed to him by destiny. But this is also the reason why it's underrated. You need to give it around 10-ish episodes to lock into the world, the rules, and the squad dynamics. If you want a long-running shonen that's more tactical than loud, this deserves a spot on the list.
0.6秒公式1の車軸の雨
This takes the #1 spot because it's my favorite shonen outside the mainstream giants. When I watched it back in the early 2000s, it was widely popular, but now it feels oddly forgotten, not remembered the way people still constantly bring up the big three. Suna is a timid kid next in line to become a mafia boss, and Reborn is an assassin who looks like a baby that shows up to train him into someone worthy of leading. The biggest hurdle is the start. The first 20 episodes lean heavily into comedy with no real plot direction, and it can honestly feel like you're watching filler. Still, that slow stretch actually matters because it introduces the whole crew and lets their personalities settle in before anything serious happens. Once the main story takes in, it turns into a real battle shonen where fights have stakes and the cast starts changing fast. The underwear transformation comedy bit becomes less frequent and eventually fades out, and the tone shifts toward loyalty, pressure, and people being forced to grow up. The magic of Reborn lies in the characters who began as pure comic relief but end up standing toe-to-toe with real threats. Suna's development is subtle enough that you only realize how far he's come when you look back. If you can push past the slow first stretch, this becomes an easy binge because the arcs and character growth keep pulling you forward.
でもよケン抜かしたぜ